She walked into a Michelin-star tea house in Seoul, wearing gray sweatpants stained with bleach and a hoodie 2 sizes too big. She did it to prove a point. She did it to make the wealthy Korean man waiting for her look at her with disgust and walk away. She wanted to be rejected. But she made a fatal miscalculation. Because Kang Min-ho didn't see a mess. He saw the only real thing in a city full of plastic lies. And by the time she realized who he really was, and what he was capable of doing to keep her, it was too late to run. Welcome back to Stories by Moonlight. Before we dive into the dark streets of Seoul, tell me, have you ever pushed someone away because you were afraid they might actually like you? Smash that subscribe button, like, and share. Now, let's begin. The fluorescent lights of the Myeongdong public restroom hummed with a headache-inducing flicker. Nia Okeke stared at her reflection in the dirty mirror. She looked beautiful. Too beautiful. Her skin was glowing, her makeup was flawless, and the blouse she was wearing accentuated curves that usually stop traffic in Seoul. "No," Nia whispered. "Absolutely not." She wasn't going to do this again. She was tired of sitting across from men who looked at her like an exotic souvenir. Men who fetishized her skin color or asked rude questions about her hair while trying to slide a hand up her thigh. She reached into her backpack and pulled out her weapon. Not a knife, not pepper spray, a pair of gray, shapeless sweatpants, stained with a drop of bleach near the hem, and a baggy hoodie. She began to scrub. She took a wet paper towel and wiped off the lipstick, the foundation, the mascara. She stripped off the nice blouse and pulled on the sweatpants. When she looked back in the mirror, the stunning Nigerian beauty was gone. In her place stood an exhausted, overworked cleaner who looked like she had just rolled out of a dumpster. "Perfect," she muttered. If this blind date wanted a trophy, he was going to be disappointed. If he wanted a fantasy, she was going to give him a reality check. Nia walked out of the subway station into the heart of Insadong. The district was charming, all cobblestone streets, traditional hanok roofs, and the smell of expensive tea. She marched right past the tourists taking selfies in their rented hanboks. She found the tea house. It was one of those places that was so quiet you felt guilty for breathing. And there he was. Kang Min-ho. Even from the back, he radiated money. He was sitting by the window, wearing a bespoke black suit that fit his broad shoulders like armor. His hair was styled with severe precision. A Rolex glinted on his wrist. He looked like a K-drama lead. Or a villain. Nia took a deep breath. Let's get this over with. She walked up to the table. She didn't bow. She didn't smile. She pulled out the wooden chair, which scraped loudly against the floor, drawing stares from the other patrons, and slumped into it. She spread her legs, comfortably, crossed her arms over her stained hoodie, and looked him dead in the eye. "I'm Nia," she announced flatly. Min-ho turned from the window. His face was devastating. High cheekbones, a sharp jaw, and eyes as dark and cold as obsidian. He looked at her. He looked at the hoodie, the no-makeup face, the bleach stain on her pants. Nia waited for the sneer. She waited for him to check his watch and make an excuse to leave. "I'm broke," Nia continued, twisting the knife. "I'm tired, and I dress like this because I don't care what you think. If you want to leave, the door is there." The silence stretched, heavy, dangerous. Min-ho didn't blink. He just studied her, like a predator analyzing a new species of prey. Then, the corner of his mouth twitched. "Finally," he said. His voice was deep, a baritone rumble that vibrated through the table and settled straight into Nia's chest. "Finally," he repeated. "Someone who isn't wearing a mask." Nia blinked, caught off guard. Excuse me? Min-ho didn't answer. Instead, he reached for his neck. He loosened his silk tie. He unbuttoned his collar. Then he stood up and took off his tailored suit jacket, tossing it carelessly onto the empty chair next to him. He rolled up his crisp white sleeves. Nia's eyes widened. Under the expensive fabric, his forearms were covered in ink. Dark, intricate tattoos of dragons and waves that disappeared under his shirt. The mark of the Geumneun Syndicate. He leaned forward, mirroring her posture, resting his tattooed arms on the delicate table. "I'm Min-ho," he said, holding her gaze with an intensity that made the air in the room feel thin. "I'm rich, I'm tired, and I hate this suit." The date was supposed to last 20 minutes. It lasted 4 hours. They left the suffocating silence of the tea house and walked toward Changdeokgung Palace. They walked along the stone walls near the secret garden, the moonlight casting long shadows through the ancient trees. Nia forgot about the sweatpants. She forgot about the bill collectors calling her phone. She found herself talking, really talking. She told him about Nigeria, about the heat, the food, the noise, about her brother back home who was sick and how she was working 2 jobs, waitressing and cleaning, to keep him alive. She expected pity. Min-ho gave her respect. He listened with a terrifying focus. He didn't interrupt. He didn't ask to touch her hair. He looked at her like she was an equation he was trying to solve. "Why did you really dress like that tonight?" he asked, stopping near the palace gates. Nia looked down at her sneakers. "Because men here, they don't see me. They see a color. Or a fetish. I wanted to be ugly so you would leave me alone?" Min-ho stepped closer. He was tall. He towered over her, blocking out the city lights. He reached out. Nia flinched instinctively, but he didn't grab her. He gently tucked a loose curl of hair behind her ear. His fingers grazed her neck, rough, calloused skin against her softness. The contact sent a jolt of electricity straight down her spine. "You have a warrior's heart, Nia," he murmured, his voice low and rough. He looked at her stained sweatpants, then up to her eyes. "Most people in this city, they are hollow. They are plastic." He stepped in, invading her personal space, smelling of expensive cologne and danger. "You are solid." For a moment, Nia couldn't breathe. The sexual tension was thick, suffocating. She looked at his lips. She wondered what it would feel like to be kissed by a man who looked at the world with such cold eyes, but looked at her with such heat. "I should go," she whispered, panicking. "I have work early." Min-ho didn't push. He nodded. "I will take you home." He drove her to her tiny apartment in his black sedan. He didn't ask to come up. He didn't ask for her number. He just took her hand, brought it to his lips, and kissed her knuckles. "Sleep well, Nia," he said. Nia watched him drive away. She walked into her cramped apartment, slid down the door, and put her head in her hands. Her plan had failed spectacularly. She had tried to scare him away with her reality. Instead, she had just made the most dangerous man in Seoul fall in love with it. Nia tried to sabotage this date because she believes she's unlovable. She judged him for being rich, and he judged her for being real. Most people sabotage their own happiness because they are afraid of being seen. If you have ever pushed someone away because you were scared they might actually love the real you, hit the like button right now. Do not lie to yourself. We've all done it. The magic of the moonlight vanished the moment the sun rose over the Han River. Nia didn't have time to daydream about the man with the tattoos and the gentle hands. She had bills to pay. At 8 a.m. sharp, she swiped her keycard for the service elevator at the Lotte Signal, the tallest and most expensive tower in Seoul. She wasn't Nia the girl on a date anymore. She was Nia the maid, invisible, silent. She pulled her hair back, put on her uniform, and wheeled her cart toward the VVIP penthouse on the 100th floor. She hummed a quiet tune as she punched in the code. The penthouse was usually empty. It belonged to a ghost client who paid in cash and never complained about dust. She pushed open the heavy double doors. The first thing that hit her wasn't the smell of lemon polish. It was the smell of copper, metallic, sharp, and expensive scotch. Nia froze. The living room was destroyed. A glass table was shattered. And in the center of the room, on a plastic tarp spread over the Persian rug, a man was tied to a chair. He was beaten, bloody, weeping silently through a gag. Standing over him was a man in a black suit. Nia's breath hitched. She knew those shoulders. She knew that hair. The man turned slightly. He raised a gun, a sleek, black pistol with a silencer screwed onto the barrel. Foot. The sound was barely louder than a cough. The man in the chair jerked once, then slumped forward. Dead. Nia clamped her hand over her mouth, but a small, terrified squeak escaped. The shooter spun around. It was him, Kang Min-ho. But the warmth from the garden was gone. His eyes were dead, cold, empty. He looked at the body. Then he looked at her. He saw the maid uniform, the cart, the terror in her eyes. Nia. The name left his lips like a curse. He took a step toward her. Blood splattered on the crisp white collar of the shirt he had rolled up for her just hours ago. Nia, wait! No! She gasped. No, no, no! She threw the cart forward. It crashed into him, knocking him off balance. She turned and ran. She sprinted down the hallway, hitting the stairwell door. She didn't wait for the elevator. She ran down 10 flights of stairs before collapsing into a service exit, bursting out into the cold morning air. She didn't go home. Home was the first place a killer would look. She ran blindly, her lungs burning, her mind fracturing. She needed to disappear. She took 3 different taxis, doubling back, weaving through the city until she reached Bucheon-hanok village. The maze of ancient traditional houses and narrow, winding alleyways was the only place she could think of. A place with too many corners, too many shadows. She huddled behind a stone wall in a dead-end alley, shaking so hard her teeth rattled. He's a monster. You went on a date with a monster? She heard tires screeching, black SUVs, heavy doors slamming. Find her! The voice echoed off the tile roofs. It was Min-ho. But he didn't sound angry. He sounded frantic. Do not hurt her! Secure the perimeter! If Choi's men see her, she's dead! Nia pressed herself into the brickwork, tears streaming down her face. Choi! Who is Choi? She heard footsteps crunching on the gravel. Heavy. Fast. She tried to run toward the main street, but a figure loomed at the entrance of the alley. It was him. Min-ho blocked the light. He looked huge, terrifying, and desperate. Nia! She panicked. She grabbed a loose stone from the wall and swung it. He caught her wrist in midair. He didn't break it. He slammed her back against the stone wall, hard enough to knock the wind out of her, but not enough to bruise. Let me go! She screamed, thrashing against him. You killed him! You're a murderer! Stop! He roared. He used his body weight to pin her. He pressed his hips against hers, trapping her legs. He pinned her wrists above her head with one large hand. The struggle shifted instantly. It wasn't a fight anymore. It was a collision. Nia froze. She was completely trapped beneath him. She could feel every inch of him. The hardness of his chest. The heavy, rapid thud of his heart hammering against her own. The heat radiating from him was suffocating. He was panting, his breath hot on her face, His eyes searched hers, wild, dilated, terrified. "I am a murderer," he rasped, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous growl. "I am a bad man, Nia. I am the king of this God-forsaken city." He leaned in, his nose brushing hers. "But I didn't come here to kill you." He shifted his grip, his fingers interlocking with hers against the wall, palm to palm. "My rival, Director Choi. He has eyes on the penthouse. He saw you leave. If you go to the police, Choi will kill you just to get to me." Nia looked up at him. She saw the blood speck on his jaw. She saw the monster. But she also felt the way his body was shielding hers. He was covering her completely, making himself the target. "Why?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "I'm just a maid." Min-ho closed his eyes for a second, resting his forehead against hers. The intimacy of the gesture was shattering. "Because last night," he whispered, his lips grazing hers as he spoke, "was the first time in 10 years I didn't feel like a ghost." He opened his eyes. They burned with a dark, possessive need. "I don't care about the Empire, Nia. I care about you." He released her wrists, but he didn't step back. Instead, his hands slid down to cup her face, his thumbs wiping away her tears. "I am going to take you somewhere safe," he promised, "and I am never letting you out of my sight again." Nia realized 2 things in that moment. First, that she was in mortal danger, and second, that she had never felt safer than she did pressed against the body of the man who had just killed for her. He is a killer. He just took a life. But right now, he is the only thing keeping Nia alive. Society tells you to run from the bad boy, but what if the monster is the only one who can protect you? If you would stay with Min-ho instead of running to the police, comment, "I would stay." Don't pretend you're better than her. We all want to be protected like that. The drive into the mountains was a blur of rain and silence. Min-ho drove with one hand on the wheel, the other gripping Nia's hand on the center console so tight his knuckles were white. He didn't look at her. He couldn't. He was terrified that if he looked, he would see fear, and that would break him. The Safehouse wasn't a cabin. It was a fortress of concrete and glass, hidden deep in the forest of Bukhansan, invisible from the road. Min-ho pulled the car into the underground garage. The heavy steel door slammed shut behind them, sealing them in. The silence was deafening. "Upstairs," he said, his voice rough. "There is heat, food. No one can find us here." Nia got out. Her legs were shaking. She was still wearing the stained gray sweatpants and the hoodie. She looked at Min-ho. Under the harsh garage lights, the blood on his white shirt was vivid. A stark, violent red against the expensive fabric. He saw her looking at it. He cursed under his breath and began to unbutton the shirt, ripping it off to reveal a plain black undershirt beneath. "I'm sorry," he rasped. "I know I look like a killer," Nia finished. Min-ho flinched. He turned away, walking toward the stairs. "Come, you're shivering." The living room was stark, modern, and cold. Rain lashed against the floor-to-ceiling windows. Min-ho poured a glass of water and handed it to her. His hand brushed hers. Nia didn't pull away. The adrenaline that had been fueling her flight was crashing, but it wasn't turning into exhaustion. It was turning into something else, something hot, something volatile. She looked at this man, this monster who ruled the city, who had just pinned her against a wall and promised to burn the world down for her. "You're hurt," she whispered. She reached out and touched the graze on his cheek, the one he got when he tackled her. Min-ho froze. He closed his eyes, leaning into her palm. "It's nothing." It's not nothing. Nia stepped closer. The space between them vanished. You said the suit was a lie, she said, her voice trembling. You said you were tired of wearing a mask. She hooked her fingers into the hem of his black undershirt. So, take it off. Min-ho's eyes snapped open. They were black, dilated, burning with a hunger that terrified and thrilled her. Nia, he warned, his voice a low growl. I am holding on by a thread. If you touch me, I will not be able to stop. Good, she breathed. Don't stop. Min-ho let out a sound that was half groan, half roar. He grabbed her waist and lifted her onto the heavy oak table, sweeping the expensive vase onto the floor. It shattered, but neither of them looked. He stepped between her legs. You saw the worst of me, he whispered, his hands shaking as they found the hem of her baggy hoodie. You saw the blood, and you're still here. I'm here. He pulled the hoodie over her head. He pulled the sweatpants down. There was no lingerie, no silk, just her, bare and real and trembling. Min-ho looked at her like she was a religious experience. He traced the curve of her hip with his tattooed hand. The contrast, his pale skin covered in dark ink against her rich dark skin, was striking. Beautiful. He worshipped. Solid. He kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was a collision of teeth and tongues, desperate and messy. He tasted like rain and violence. Nia wrapped her legs around his waist, pulling him closer, needing to feel the weight of him. He stripped off his pants, kicking them away. He was hard, heavy. He positioned himself at her entrance, his hands gripping her thighs, bruising the skin. He paused, looking her dead in the eye. You are not a maid tonight, Nia. You are not a waitress. He pushed into her one slow, stretching inch. You are a queen. He thrust deep, burying himself inside her. Nia threw her head back and screamed, the sound tearing through the silent house. It was electric. Every thrust was a claim. Every movement was a declaration of war against the death she had seen that morning. Min-ho didn't close his eyes. He watched her face. He watched the way her breath hitched, the way her nails dug into his tattooed shoulders. Mine, he growled against her neck, biting the sensitive cord of muscle. Tell me you're mine. I'm yours, she sobbed, arching into him. Min-ho, I'm yours. He moved faster, the friction building into an unbearable heat. He wasn't just taking pleasure, he was giving it, worshipping her body with a terrifying intensity. He ground against her, hitting the spot that made her vision blur. That's it, he praised, his voice rough and broken. Come for me. Let me feel you. Nia shattered. The orgasm ripped through her, blinding and absolute. She clamped down on him, her body convulsing. Min-ho groaned, his control snapping. He drove into her hard 3-4 times before pouring himself into her with a guttural shout. He collapsed against her, his forehead resting on her shoulder, his breathing ragged. The rain pounded against the glass, but inside, there was only the sound of their hearts hammering in unison. They stayed like that for a long time, tangled, sweaty, exposed. Min-ho lifted his head. He kissed the sheen of sweat on her forehead. He traced her spine with one finger. You saw the monster? He whispered into the darkness. And you let him in? Nia ran her hand over the dragon tattoo on his arm. I didn't let the monster in, Min-ho, she whispered back. I let the man in. He told her he was a monster, and she showed him he was a man. Have you ever loved someone who thought they were unlovable? Tell us in the comments if you believe love can really save someone from their own darkness. The piece lasted exactly 1 hour. Nia was lying on Min-ho's chest, tracing the line of ink that ran down his sternum. The rain had stopped, leaving a heavy, suffocating silence in the forest. Min-ho was drifting, his hand tangled in her hair, his breathing even. For the first time in his life, the King of Seoul was off guard, and that was when the window shattered. Crash. It wasn't a rock, it was a canister. It hit the floor and hissed, spewing white gas. "Move!" Min-ho moved faster than thought. He rolled off the bed, dragging Nia with him to the floor, covering her body with his own as a spray of bullets chewed up the mattress where they had been laying seconds ago. "Get dressed," he barked, shoving her hoodie into her hands. "Now!" Nia scrambled into her clothes, her heart hammering against her ribs. The air was filling with smoke. "Who is it?" she coughed. Min-ho pulled a gun from under the nightstand. His face was a mask of cold fury. "Choi, he found us." He grabbed her hand. "We move. Stay behind me. If I shoot, you run." They burst out of the back exit into the wet, dark woods. The Safehouse was swarming. Flashlights cut through the trees. Men shouting in Korean. Min-ho didn't fight them. He led Nia down a hidden path, sliding down the muddy embankment to where a second car was stashed. A beat-up sedan, not a luxury car. "Get in." He hot-wired it in seconds. They roared onto the mountain road, tires screeching. But headlights appeared in the rearview mirror. 2 black SUVs. "They're gaining on us!" Nia shouted, gripping the dashboard. Min-ho drifted around a hairpin turn, his face grim. "They are hurting us," he realized, his eyes narrowing. "They aren't trying to run us off the road. They are pushing us toward the city. Why? Because Choi likes an audience." The chase ended where it began, in the heart of the city, spiraling up the winding road to Namsan Mountain. Min-ho's car took a hit to the rear tire. It spun out, slamming into the guardrail at the base of the Seoul Tower. "Out!" Min-ho commanded. They scrambled out of the smoking car. The SUVs blocked the road down. There was nowhere to go but up. They ran toward the observation deck. The city of Seoul glittering below them like a sea of diamonds, beautiful and indifferent to their terror. They reached the viewing platform. It was deserted at this hour, just the wind howling through the metal grating. Nia ran to the edge. It was a sheer drop. "We're trapped," she whispered. Steps echoed on the metal stairs. Slow, deliberate. Director Choi emerged from the shadows. He was older than Min-ho, wearing a white suit that looked pristine despite the chaos. 6 armed men flanked him. "Kang Min-ho?" Choi sneered, lighting a cigarette. "The Grim Reaper, hiding in the woods with the help." He looked at Nia. His gaze was oily, repulsive. "So this is the witness, the maid." Min-ho stepped in front of Nia. He raised his gun, but he was outgunned 6-1. "She is not a maid," Min-ho growled. "She is my wife." Nia's head snapped up. "Wife?" Choi laughed. "Sentimental trash. Give her to me, Min-ho. We kill the witness, you keep your territory. A fair trade." Choi took a step forward. "Walk away, and she dies quickly. Fight, and I make you watch what my men do to her." Nia grabbed the back of Min-ho's shirt. She could feel the tension in his muscles. He was vibrating with rage. He lowered his gun slowly. "You want her?" Min-ho asked softly. "Smart choice." Choi smirked. Min-ho turned to Nia. He blocked her from Choi's view. He looked at her sweatpants, her messy hair, her terrified eyes. "Do you trust me?" he whispered. "Min-ho, don't," she sobbed, thinking he was about to hand her over. He reached out and cupped her face. "I told you I was a monster, Nia." He leaned in, his lips brushing hers. "But tonight, I'm your monster." He kissed her hard, a goodbye kiss that tasted of despair. Then he spun around. He didn't hand her over. He fired 3 shots in rapid succession. Not at the men, but at the heavy glass pane of the safety barrier behind them. Shatter. The glass exploded outward. "Jump!" Min-ho roared. He grabbed Nia around the waist and threw them both into the void. They fell. The wind screamed in Nia's ears. It wasn't a suicide jump. Min-ho had aimed for the maintenance netting suspended 20 feet below the deck, a flimsy web of cable and mesh meant to catch falling debris. They hit the net hard. Nia screamed as the breath was knocked out of her. The net groaned, snapping under their weight, swinging wildly over the abyss of the forest floor below. Min-ho groaned, rolling off her. "Move!" he gasped. "Get to the trees!" They scrambled off the net onto the steep slope of the mountain, sliding down through the dirt and leaves. Above them, flashlights beamed down. Gunshots pinged off the rocks. Min-ho dragged her up. He was limping. "Go!" He pushed her toward the thick tree line. "Run to the main road. Lose yourself in the crowd." "Not without you." "I can't run, Nia!" He gestured to his leg. A dark stain was spreading on his thigh. He had been hit during the fall. "I have to hold them off. If they follow, they catch us both." He shoved his gun into her hand. "Take it. Don't stop. Don't look back." "Min-ho, no, I love you!" she screamed, the words tearing out of her. He froze. For a second, the killer softened. He looked at her with pure, devastating heartbreak. "I know," he whispered. Then he turned back toward the slope, pulling a knife from his boot. "Go!" He charged back up the hill, roaring to draw their fire. Nia watched him disappear into the darkness. She heard the shouts. She heard the wet thud of a knife hitting home, and then a barrage of gunfire that drowned out the world. She turned and ran. She ran until her lungs burned, until the branches tore her hoodie, until she collapsed on the side of the highway, alone in the city that had taken everything from her. 2 weeks later. The motel room on the outskirts of Incheon smelled of bleach and stale cigarettes. Nia sat on the edge of the sagging mattress, staring at the television without seeing it. She was wearing the gray sweatpants. The same ones she had worn on the date. The same ones she had worn in the Safehouse. Now, they were the only thing holding her together. She hadn't slept in 3 days. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Min-ho standing on the side of the mountain, surrounded by darkness, screaming at her to run. She saw the muzzle flashes. She heard the silence that followed. "He's gone," she whispered to the empty room. She had checked the news every hour. There were reports of a gang war in Seoul. Bodies found in the Namsan forest, but no names. The news anchor's voice cut through her daze. "Breaking news. The body of Choi Jin-woo, heir to the Hanseong Group, was found this morning in his private residence." Nia looked up, her heart stopping. "Police report he was executed. Sources say the Geumneun Syndicate has reclaimed control of the district." The Syndicate. Nia stood up, her hands trembling. If the Syndicate was still operating, if Choi was dead. Bang. The door to her motel room didn't open. It exploded inward. The lock splintered. The wood cracked. Nia screamed, scrambling back against the headboard, grabbing the lamp as a weapon. A figure filled the doorway. He was leaning heavily against the frame. His white shirt was gone, replaced by dirty bandages wrapped around his torso. His face was battered, a jagged cut running through his eyebrow. He was limping, but his eyes, those dark, obsidian eyes, were burning with a terrifying, familiar fire. "Min-ho!" she choked out. He didn't speak. He kicked the door shut behind him and locked the deadbolt. He limped across the room. He looked like a corpse that had clawed its way out of the grave just to find her. "You left," he rasped, his voice sounding like it was filled with gravel. "You told me to run." "I told you to run," he growled, reaching the bed. "I didn't tell you to hide where I couldn't find you." He dropped to his knees in front of her. He grabbed her hips, burying his face in her stomach. He inhaled deeply, a shudder racking his massive, broken body. "You're alive," she sobbed, her hands tangling in his dirty hair. "I thought you were dead. I thought I killed you." Min-ho looked up. "I told you," he whispered. "I am the Grim Reaper. I decide when I die." He kissed her. It wasn't romantic. It was violent. It was the desperate, starving kiss of a man who had spent 14 days in hell thinking he would never touch heaven again. He pushed her back onto the mattress. "I need to feel you," he said, his hands tearing at her hoodie. "I need to know you're real." "I'm real," she promised. "I'm here." He stripped her. He didn't have the patience for gentleness. He stripped himself, his bandages stark against his bruised skin. When he entered her, it was with a guttural roar of relief. Nia cried out, wrapping her legs around him, pulling him as deep as he could go. This wasn't lovemaking. This was survival. It was rough, messy, and consuming. Min-ho moved with a frantic rhythm, his sweat mixing with the grime on his skin. He needed to claim her, to mark her, to erase the distance of the last 2 weeks. "You don't run from me," he grunted against her lips, biting down on her lower lip until he tasted copper. "Never again." "Never," she vowed. "I'm staying, even if it kills us." "It won't kill us," he promised, driving into her one last time, finding his release with a shout that shook the walls. "Because nothing kills a monster who has something to protect." 6 months later. The Grand Hyatt Seoul was glittering with chandeliers and camera flashes. It was the charity gala of the year. Every politician, celebrity, and power broker in South Korea was there, including the new chairman of the Geumneun Corporation. Nia stepped out of the limousine. She was wearing a dress made of liquid gold silk. It hugged every curve, flowing to the floor in a pool of light. She wore diamonds at her throat that cost more than her entire village back in Nigeria. She smiled at the cameras. She held her head high, but inside she felt tight. The dress was beautiful, but it felt like a costume. The makeup felt like a mask. She felt Min-ho's hand on the small of her back. He was wearing a tuxedo. The scars on his neck were hidden by the collar, but she knew they were there. He leaned in, guiding her away from the red carpet toward a private balcony. "You are doing it again," he murmured. "Doing what?" "Hiding." Nia looked at him. "I'm not hiding. I'm being the perfect wife. I'm playing the part." Min-ho sighed. He reached into his tuxedo pocket. He pulled out a black elastic hair tie. "Turn around," he commanded softly. Nia turned. Min-ho gathered her perfectly styled, expensive hair. He pulled it up, twisting it into a messy, chaotic bun on top of her head. He pulled a few strands loose to frame her face. "There," he said. Nia touched her hair. "Min-ho, the cameras, the investors." "Let them look," he said, turning her to face him. He looked at her with that same intensity he had in the tea house, the day she wore the stained hoodie. He kissed her forehead. "I love the dress, Nia. You look like a queen." He smirked, the corner of his mouth lifting. "But I still like the sweatpants better." Nia laughed. It was a loud, real sound that echoed over the silent, stuffy balcony. She kissed him. "Let's go home," she whispered. "Way ahead of you." Min-ho took her hand, leading her out of the gala, leaving the world of plastic lies behind. They walked into the night, the king of Seoul, and the woman who had brought him to his knees, finally, perfectly real. They jumped into the darkness together. She waited for him when the world told her he was gone. True love isn't about flowers and dates. It's about who you would bleed for. If you made it this far, it means you crave a love this deep. Subscribe now, because only the loyal get to see how the next story ends. Don't be the person who walks away before the miracle happens.